This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Payal, welcome to Five Questions.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so great to finally be able to talk with you. You've had a roller coaster over the past 2+ years, having a kid as well as selling your company. But I'd like to start kind of early on because this kind of intrigued me. Why did you only allocate 14 days to coming up with the original idea for your company?
So the reason I gave myself 2 weeks to think of an idea was, first, the idea of entrepreneurship wasn't something that I really knew anything about. It wasn't something anyone was talking about around me. So it felt like a strange path in the first place, right? And so I figured, okay, if I give myself 2 weeks, I can kind of time box this decision if I'm going to even pursue this way of life, or I was going to go back to the other career choices I was sort of pursuing at the time. I think I knew that the current job I was in, I was going to change no matter what, whether it was entrepreneurship or changing into another job. But I liked sort of giving myself this deadline and also giving my mind a chance to focus on something that was, really going to help it keep like thinking and iterating and moving on one idea. And it really helped because you know what? It only took me 36 hours.
It's amazing. I mean, for me, I was moonlighting. So I was working for a big tech company. It was 3.5 years of nights and weekends before things took off because it's about timing. It's about building the platform, getting people invested. But I think that's actually a really good idea to give yourself a short period of time. It's almost like on Twitter, you get 140 characters. It puts pressure on you to come up with a good idea.
Yeah. And it did take me 3 years to actually get ClassPass working, but that's another whole part of the journey.
Can you describe your unique goal setting method that you wrote in the book?
Yeah. So the LifePass method, it's a goal setting system I created about 7 years ago during an interesting time in my life where professionally everything was going well. Personally, everything was going downhill. I think sometimes people have that flip, but I needed a system to look across everything and apply, I feel like, the way I did succeed in things to other areas of my life. So the whole process, it's 4 steps. It can take an hour and a half, so we can't get through the whole thing. But really what I do is I focus in, the first 3 steps are all about focusing in on where you're going to set goals, right? Because it's not just about setting goals, it's about where they're going to actually be focused and how you're going to actually do them. So step 1 is all about reflecting, figuring out where you are currently. Step 2 is about dreaming on how do you want to feel? Not, okay, I'm going to dream to accomplish these things. It's how do you want to feel in a year? Like what themes do you want this year to really carry for you? So you're anchoring yourself on that sort of theme, right? For you as you goal set. And then the third step, which is a bit more of like an in-depth process, we go through a whole like time analysis of all the areas of your life. We figure out like which areas are sort of serving you or not based on your dream words. And then we do a quarterly focusing. So I have everyone focus on 3 to 5 areas of their life for the next quarter only. And those are your focus words. And then we go to step 4 and we set really detailed goals in every single one of those areas, right? So at the end, you end up with 10 to 15 sort of mini goals that you can really set. And I am really precise on how I set goals, right? And I have now built a whole system for myself. Like if I write down a goal, the chances of it getting done are like 95%, right? And I kind of have that metric with myself. Like it's more because I've set them right? It's not because I just am good at doing things. It's really more about, I have gone through an intentional process of making sure that my goals are set in a really, really specific way. So, something like I want to go and learn like a new skill, right? A lot of times people will be like, okay, I'm going to take yoga, right? And like, you just don't know where to start, and it can really start with like, just go online for 30 minutes and like find 5 studios, like research them is step 2, sign up for the first class. If you get there in the 3 months, that is more success than going through a year and never going to a yoga class ever. So a lot of this process of what I do, and I go through all these tips, is how to actually set these goals, making them measurable, making sure they're like in line with the right way. And then I talk obviously a lot about execution, because at the end of the day, goals are only good if you get them done.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
There's so many people who have all these great dreams, especially when you're young. The younger you are, you have like these ridiculous, you want to be an astronaut, you have like the biggest dreams ever. You want to be like a Marvel superhero. And then as you get older, you say, oh, well, I can't do that or that. And then, you start to kind of lose track of that or figure out that you can't achieve some of those crazy, wild dreams. But I think that it is in the execution as you get older. It's okay. If you want to do something, it's that step-by-step method. It's really having a plan.
It builds confidence, right? Like I think to me, and I always say this, like ClassPass started with me putting on a show, probably myself for the first time for 100 people. And I know that sounds like so absurd, but like being able to put on a dance show for 100 people taught me I could do something and that I knew how to lead and I had to bring people together and how to market, which helped me to set like a bigger goal, which helped me set a bigger goal and eventually decide to start a tech company and then, do more and more things with ClassPass. But I wasn't afraid of going after things because I had a system inbuilt and I had a trust in myself of executing.
What I like about the system is it makes me think of consulting. Like assessing your current situation is a very consulting thing to do.
Well, I came from that background.
Exactly. No, it makes perfect sense. And what's really interesting with my first book, that's how I was thinking about it too. It's like, okay, what's the process I use? Because my first book was on personal branding back in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And it was like, what's my method for doing it?
Right.
And it was this consulting method that I learned in school and I carried over. And so that's why I thought it was really interesting because it's a very practical thing and it's very tangible and it works because consulting in general has existed before we were born.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and it's practical, but I also think what I wanted to do is marry it with like emotion and thoughts, which is why I started with like, how do you feel? Because I think sometimes goal setting can be so practical that like you kind of are devoid of the intention. And I wanted to find a way and look, and I think, I'm sure you know this too, any method you give out there, like it's about helping somebody build a practice, right? In any way, like, yes, like I want you to follow this, like, but you need to find what's going to work from you. So if you take parts of this and sort of make it your own, I'd rather you do that and come up with the system that works for you. This is what works for me, but it's a method and it's a way. And the best thing you could do is keep doing it.
Yeah. And you went through this process over the past few years because you had to figure out what you wanted to do next because you had sold your company to MindBody last year. So can you describe how you decided what to focus on next and kind of that part of the decision-making process?
Yeah, well, it was only at the end of last year. So I feel like I've had this book sort of like front and center since, which has been an awesome way to even reflect on the journey and celebrate it. But, it's interesting. And a lot of people have asked me this, like it has brought me back to the beginning of my book, and actually like, I think I was doing my audiobook and I remember being like, feeling some of that anxiety of like, what do I want to do? And I'm like, wow, like I should follow my own advice here. Like I've been here, this 10-year journey I went on is all about like finding that calling and not letting anything stand in your way. And so I just have to keep that in my mind as I keep trying new things right now. And, I'm exploring, I'm in an explore phase right now. It's a great phase to be in. It's slightly uncomfortable. I think Jay Shetty, our good friend, he always says this, it's like everyone wants to be in the phase they're not in. And, I've been in a build phase. I've been in a scale phase in my life. And I've craved being in the explore phase again. And I'm in it now. And I'm 100% trying to enjoy it because I'd rather take a year to explore to then build and scale the next decade of my life.
And you have the opposite problem of what a lot of people have because you've been so successful. So the standard and expectations are set so high for you rather than someone who, maybe is very young and is just starting off in their career. There's no real expectation per se, maybe by like their parents.
Yeah.
But for you, it's like, it's not just, what's next, it's what's next that can kind of make me feel like I'm challenged, but also like, be at this level of quality that I expect for myself, not just that other people expect from me.
100%. I actually end my whole book with this. My afterword literally opens with this question, which I'm glad you didn't ask me, which is like, how does it feel that you might never build anything as big as ClassPass in your life again? And someone asked me this like 4 or 5 years ago, and it stayed in the back of my head, because I was like, whoa, like, it is like ClassPass is an anomaly, like at the end of the day, like I know what went into it and all of that. And I realized I have to define what does big mean, to me, it's actually about impact, right? Like the part of ClassPass I loved the most was people going to class and getting something from it. And there's so many ways to keep impacting it, but it is something that I have to keep myself in check about, to not be measuring myself against my past.
Absolutely. And I mean, ClassPass was part of the larger health and wellness movement that is just continuing to take the world by storm. And it's such a great and positive thing when it comes to
Yep.
kind of self-care and making it through, tough situations. Obviously working out during, pandemic is how you can stay sane as well, not just in terms
Absolutely.
of physical health, but mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I do it every day. So
And what were some of the lessons you learned during your time leading ClassPass that will help you at this next phase of your career?
when I started being an entrepreneur, and look, you just said it, like I came from this consulting background. It was like everything was very like prescribed, right? But entrepreneurship is not a prescription at all, right? There's no blueprint. There's no, this is the next step. And actually, if you do it that way, and I did it that way, you probably won't figure anything out. I actually talk about false signals of success in my book because I was led by them, right? And when I say false signals of success, like things like, oh, we're getting followers. We had like a lot of email addresses. We raised money. We ended up like on the cover of Inc. magazine. Like all these amazing check marks were great. But then I launched my product and no one was going to class. And that's when I realized like I need to stop following sort of the system that's in place. And even though like this is what everyone's telling me is success really came down to me completing my mission, right? And I think once I really started listening to that, and this is as similar to someone saying like, yeah, listen to your why. I really felt that it was easier to make decisions for the company. It was easier to scale. It was easier to do so many hire people because I knew what the magic of the company was. And it was so important to hang on to that. So I think that was probably my biggest learning. And I think, I'm a pretty type A human being and I like to like be very detailed about everything. I think I also learned to be a bit more like adaptable and sort of like let my customers play and tell me what they want versus me being like, this is what you're going to get. And I think part of that journey has opened me up to being like that in other aspects of my life, of being sort of nimble and not like losing the journey in sort of the action of like trying to get everything done.
I love that. And I do think that a lot of the skills that you've learned, not just the lessons, but the skill set you learned during your time at ClassPass is applicable to basically everything. Like, even writing a book is being organized, having those deadlines, whatever you do next, the SAW dance company, like being able to organize that and perform. A lot of that is the same type of psychology and mindset that you had developed for so many years, even when you were a consultant. And so I think that what's really cool about career development, not just my career, your career, but in general, is it's really a collection of skills and experiences 100%. That can then be parlayed into other projects and everything. And then it's also the network that surrounds that. So think about the network you built through ClassPass. So now if you want to do another tech company per se, let's say, is you already have this network that potentially can be leveraged for the next project. So you have this beautiful foundation of skills and contacts and friends and all these people that can help you with these transitions. And that's what I always tell, my friends and my peers is that, even if this doesn't work out, just trust me, there's something that's going to come out of this.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And you say it so well with skills, right? It's about like knowing what you're getting from a job. Like even there were a few jobs, like even consulting, like it may have not been my passion at the time or working in the music industry, but I learned so much from it that took me forward, right? And being the entrepreneur in person I am. And I think it's so true that you have to sort of apply all the things that you learn. And honestly, like be honest with yourself on like what you are good at and what you're not good at and reevaluate that as you're moving forward.
Well said. And what's your best piece of career advice?
Just get started. I think people just need to make hard decisions and move forward. I think stop thinking and do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, action is almost like our compass to figuring out what to do. Because if you haven't experienced something, how are you supposed to know if that's the path you need to go in?
Absolutely. And, failure is just a data point. I've failed many times in my life. Like I feel like I'd rather be called like the queen of failure than the queen of success, because like what gets you to that next point of it is actually being able to say like, oh, that's not the right path for me. Let me go a different way. And it's going to bring you to a different point in, the place in your journey. So I think it's just so important, but just don't have that fear of getting started. Like I said, it took me to put on a small dance show and that led to another thing and led to another thing and built a fitness company.
That's amazing. That's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dan.